As you probably know by now if you've followed Pokemon for a while, the Pokemon designs themselves go through a lot of trial and error. Every design that makes it into the final game most assuredly goes through a tremendous amount of refinement and consideration by Game Freak staff before it is given the go-ahead. However, not all Pokemon are this lucky. Some designs naturally don't make the final cut and are either drastically altered compared to their final release or completely scrapped altogether. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that they are bad. In fact, it can be argued that some beta Pokemon designs are actually better than the ones that made it into the final games. And that's exactly what we're covering today, as I am going to go over 10 beta Pokemon who I personally believe are better than their counterparts that released with the final product. The first of these that we're going to look at is the Kuru Su line. Before Totodile came around and stole the spotlight, Kuru Su and its evolutionary family were going to be the water starter for the Johto region, but this idea was eventually scrapped. However, if you look at the entire evolutionary line, they bear a striking resemblance to the Popplio line from Sun and Moon, and most likely inspired their creation to some degree. With that said, however, I would much rather have had the Kuru Su family in the final game, as opposed to the Popplio family in Sun and Moon. Personally speaking, Popplio is really the only one of this bunch that I like, and Brionne and Primarina aren't anything impressive at all. Meanwhile, not only is Kuru Su just as cute looking as Popplio, but its evolutions hold up much better in my opinion than those of the Gen 7 starter. So if we could have had a do-over for the Alola region, these guys definitely should have made the game instead of Popplio and the rest of its line. One of the biggest examples of this idea has to come from the cut Gen 2 Pokemon Rinrin and its evolution Berurun. While these two don't really have a definite official counterpart, they are extremely similar to Purloin and Liepard from Generation 5, as they are both cats who are dark type. While not officially related as far as we know, Rinrin and its evolution are infinitely better than Purloin and Liepard and easily should have made it into the Gen 5 games over them at the very least. While just my opinion, Purloin and Liepard are just not anything special, with Liepard in particular kinda being a bit ugly. Meanwhile, Rinrin and Berurun have a very intriguing and creative design with the bell at the end of their tails, and overall just look like better made Pokemon than the Purloin family, which is kinda sad considering the Rinrin designs are at an incomplete beta stage. We know that with Black and White, Game Freak went back into the vault and sort of made the Unova Dex as a soft reboot of the Kanto one, so why they didn't take this opportunity to resurrect these awesome Gen 2 designs and gave us something that's almost identical yet way worse instead is certainly a mystery to me. Another unconfirmed yet parallel connection comes from the Pokemon Deer. Yes, a Pokemon named Deer is better than an actual official Pokemon. Let me explain. Deer is a beta Pokemon from the days of Generation 1, who unfortunately wasn't even able to make the very first games in the series. All we really have access to in terms of its appearance is a very rough sketch, but it's actually speculated that this Pokemon was eventually reworked into the Gen 2 Pokemon Stantler. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen, but at the very least they are pretty similar, and yeah, I would have taken Deer over Stantler any day. Even though Stantler wins in the name department, Deer's design, even as a rough sketch, just looks way cooler and more interesting than Stantler ever has. Stantler has always kind of had the reputation of being a derpy, stupid looking Pokemon, and the thing is, it's not even really trying to do that. If looking silly was its thing, then that would be fine, but Stantler isn't trying to look silly, yet it does a phenomenal job of that anyway. So given the way Deer looks as an alternative, I definitely would have gone that route if I was deciding who got to make the final cut. Okay, next up, how about we talk about a Pokemon that is literally brand new, and that would be Sirfetchd. Sirfetchd is a very long-awaited evolution of Farfetch'd, but it's not the very first one that's ever been conceived either. Within the beta of Pokemon Gold and Silver, an evolution to Farfetch'd known as Madam was found that, as the name suggests, seems to have been a more feminine-focused evolution of the bird Pokemon, and yes, I would rather have this over Sirfetch'd. While it does make makes sense for Farfetchd to evolve in this generation due to the UK's association with its signature leak, the design they went with in Sirfetchd really isn't that good in my opinion. First, nothing about the Pokemon itself changes at all other than its color, and its lance and shield are just a little too on the nose for a game in a UK-based region that are literally called Sword and Shield. Madam, meanwhile, while nothing too crazy in its own right, is at least different enough from Farfetchd to truly be considered an evolution, and has a nice unique thing going for it with its more feminine features that once again aren't as basic as those of its official counterpart. I hate to hate on a new Pokemon like this, but Game Freak, you had it right the first time with this one. Moving on, we have a case of a Pokemon that made the final game, simply compared to its actual beta version that looked a bit different during that stage, and the Pokemon in question here would be Magby. While not a ginormous change from beta to final, beta Magby has some features that I think make it look better compared to final Magby. First, final Magby is a bit basic compared to beta Magby. Its coloration is a little more solid overall, and doesn't quite have the patterns that make beta Magby more visually interesting. I know this can be attributed to the fact that Magby is a baby Pokemon, but Magby looks like a baby just as well in its beta form, even with these extra features. The most noticeable difference between these two, however, comes from their heads, with final Magby having more round ornamentation on its head compared to beta Magby's spiky ornamentation, and I just think the spikiness makes beta Magby look a little cooler comparatively. I don't really dislike the way Magby looks or anything like that, but I personally think that its beta form is a bit more interesting than its final incarnation. Going from Gen 2 to Gen 5, we've got one that rivals even the Purloin example as a poster child of this topic, and I'll give you one guess as to who it involves. That's right, it's Stunfisk. Now, this one's a bit interesting because we don't even have an image of what beta Stunfisk looks like, only a description that comes from an interview with Ken Sugimori via Nintendo Dream Magazine. In the interview, Sugimori stated that Stunfisk was originally blue in color and was a water-electric type as opposed to ground electric, which it was changed to in order to balance out the type coverage of the Pokédex. And to be honest, that's all I really need to hear to know that this would be better, because then we'd have a fish who's actually water type. Huh, what a concept. Since it was also blue in color though, it can be speculated that it could have been changed in appearance slightly as well, and well, you can really only get better in terms of appearance when you look like Stunfisk, so I don't really know what they were thinking over at Game Freak, but no amount of type balance is worth making a Pokemon look this bad, and even though we only have a brief description of its original appearance, it's enough to know that it would have been leagues better than what we actually got. Earlier in the video, we talked about Kuru Su being the original water starter for Generation 2, but there was another starter from this gen who was also replaced in the final game, and that would be Hoennuma. Hoennuma is a cute little fire bear looking creature, and while there's no way it could have ever been better than its final game counterpart in Cyndaquil, I would consider it better than a couple other fire starters from future generations, particularly the Litten, Tepig, and even Fennekin lines. Now, this is definitely an opinion piece, so don't go too crazy on me, but going down the line, I honestly think Hoennuma is way better than Tepig, simply because I prefer the idea of a fire bear more than a fire pig, and with Tepig's evolutions not being anything too crazy either, Hoennuma's evolutions stack up pretty well as well. With the Litten family, it's very much the same thing. I like the fire bear motif better than the style of fire cat that Litten and its evolutions are going for, and since I'm not a fan of Incineroar, I have no problem going with the final evolution of Hoennuma in this scenario either. With Fennekin, it is kind of hit and miss because Fennekin and Braixen are great, but Delphox is so bad that it kind of ruins the whole line, and Hoennuma's family are a little more consistent across the board with their appearance, so I wouldn't necessarily mind taking them over Fennekin's family either. As beta designs, they are somewhat simple, but I definitely feel like I would enjoy them more than these other fire starters I just mentioned, and if they ever would have had the opportunity to become fully fledged final designs, it wouldn't even be a contest. Next is another different sort of pick, but it'll start to make sense as I get into it. Yet another pick from the Gen 2 days. We were originally supposed to get another trio of Eeveelutions for Gold and Silver instead of just Espeon and Umbreon, because Leafeon was originally going to join that duo as well. Overall, all of these Pokemon were already pretty close to their final designs, minus a little bit of design difference for Leafeon and a type difference for Umbreon, who was actually a poison type initially, but these aren't the things that make them better than their final versions. The thing that really sets them apart is the fact that they all originally used stones to evolve. Espeon used an item known as the Heart Stone, which was ultimately scrapped. Umbreon, as a poison type, used a Poison Stone, which was also scrapped, and Leafeon naturally used a Leaf Stone. The Eeveelutions using stones to evolve was something that was established in Generation 1, but was quickly strayed away from as Espeon and Umbreon used Friendship as well as the Day and Night to evolve, and Leafeon used a Magic Forest Rock. Yep, that was a good idea. Not. Some of the Eeveelutions' evolution methods are pretty ridiculous, and it would be so much better if it was consistent and they all evolved via stones, as was the plan as of the Gold and Silver beta. Not that alternate evolution methods are bad or anything, but for Pokemon like these, I feel like it would streamline the process so much more and would make them all a little more cohesive as a unit, which is also important considering they are all a part of an evolutionary family. Hopefully one day Game Freak will come to their senses with this and update the evolution methods for these Pokemon as they have done with others in the past, but for now, their beta forms have definitely done it better in this regard. Another one coming from the Generation 1 beta isn't really connected to any one Pokemon as far as being a counterpart or anything, but it's still worth mentioning just because of how cool a Pokemon it is, and that's Jaggu. Jaggu is a shark-based Pokemon that, just like Deer, was considered for Red and Blue before being cut, with the only image we have of it being a single very rough sketch. Now, even though, as I said, there isn't really a direct counterpart to compare Jaggu directly to, there are still plenty of other similar water-type Pokemon that this guy definitely would have been better than. Just to name a few, you've got Basculin, the ever-forgettable Finneon and Lumineon, Seal and Dugong, Goldeen and Seaking, the list goes on and on. I'd even say it's comparable to the official shark Pokemon in Sharpedo, so with so much room for improvement with so many of these water types, it's a shame that this guy has never been able to see the light of day to this point. And last but not least, we've got a particularly interesting one, as it's not really known if these two Pokemon are connected or not, and it was honestly a hard choice to make as well, but nevertheless, here we are. In the Gold and Silver beta, we can see a Pokemon based on an anglerfish that does not make the final game, but we do see Lantern, who is based on an anglerfish, meaning that this Pokemon was likely an early version of Lantern, meaning that its pre-evolution, known as Manbow, is likely where Chinchou originated as well, and I can't lie, I'd be extremely tempted to take this little fella over Chinchou if that was indeed the case. Don't get me wrong, I really do like Chinchou a lot, so this one isn't nearly as cut and dry as some of the others, but I can't deny that Manbow here is pretty stinkin' adorable, while Chinchou is kinda on the weirder looking side of things. At the same time though, that weird look does make Chinchou a little more original, while Manbow is a little more traditional looking, so really I like different parts of both of these Pokemon, although I definitely wish that Manbow was real as well, so you guys are just gonna have to decide for yourselves on this one as to which you like more, and let me know in the comments below. You're also gonna have to let me know what you think of the rest of my picks as well, because even though I feel pretty good about them, this is just all my opinion at the end of the day. Be sure to leave a like too if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more Pokemon content all the time. If you want to support the channel further, you can also check out my remixes on Spotify, and give my Pokemon Cardinal project a watch if you haven't yet. This is also the last week to enter my Sword and Shield giveaway on Twitter, because Sunday is the last day to enter, and I will be picking the winner on Monday, so go check out my Twitter to enter if you haven't yet. With all that said, I'll be back on Tuesday with another video, so until then, as always, I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.